We are all scared of something, whether it be heights, clowns, or death itself. It doesn't matter. There is something that many people are commonly scared of. That possibility that someone is outside. Someone knows you are home alone late at night. When I was 12, something happened to me when I was home alone. People have asked me what happened many times in my life, and I don't like talking about it in person. But right now, I feel that I need to. Maybe telling a bunch of strangers what happened will help, because therapy is doing nothing. It happened a week or two before Thanksgiving. My parents had gone out to dinner, and then were going to go see a movie afterwards. They estimated that they would be home around midnight. No problem for me. I had been home alone many times, and honestly, I enjoyed the freedom to do whatever I wanted for a few hours. The only thing that was different about this night is that because they were going out to dinner, they didn't make dinner for me before they left. Instead, they ordered me a pizza. I was watching a movie in the living room, and my parents were sitting in the dining room waiting for the pizza to be delivered so that they could leave. Well, the pizza was taking much longer than they expected, and told me to just tip the person $5 when they got there. I found out later that they had reservations to the restaurant, and that's why they had to leave before the pizza guy got there. After they left, about another 30 minutes passed before the pizza guy got to my house. I opened the front door, and a shaky-looking guy that looked like he was on cocaine was standing there, with no pizza. I stood there looking at him bewildered and awkwardly, and then finally asked, "Where's the pizza?" The guy smiled and laughed and said, I left it in the car. I'll go get it, but first, can I come in to use your bathroom?" This was so unexpected. I hate confrontation, so I said yes. I watched the guy walk down the hallway and enter the bathroom. He closed the door. I didn't hear anything, so I sat down on the couch. I couldn't have been sitting for more than a minute. I got up and turned around, and the bathroom door was now open. Expecting to see the guy walk out at any second, I started walking towards it. But my heart sank when I realized he wasn't in the bathroom. I didn't know what to make of this, and for a moment, my mind chose to assume that he had somehow silently went out the front door to go get the pizza. I walked over to the front door and looked out the screen. I did see a car parked out front, but I couldn't see the guy. My imagination started racing with possibilities, and terror set in as I came to the realization that he might still be inside my house. I turned around and went into the kitchen. Nothing. The dining room. Nothing. I yelled out, "Hey, are you in here?" Of course, I didn't expect a response, but I got one. Without hesitation, the guy responded, "Yes." For a moment, I didn't know what to do next, so I stood there, my mind frantically trying to make sense of this messed up situation that I would normally see on TV or in a movie. I decided to briskly exit the house. I walked out the still open front door and towards the guy's car. I circled around the back of the car, and when I got to the driver's side door, I saw the most disturbing sight of my life. A person sitting in the front seat, hunched over the steering wheel, blood smeared all over the window. I looked up and saw the guy standing in the window upstairs, looking down at me. After seeing the guy hunched over in the car, the blood, and then the guy standing in the window upstairs, I ran. I ran until I saw someone. Anyone. There was a woman getting out of her car at some random house, and I actually scared her when I approached. My frantic state must have made me look dangerous. I told her what was happening at my house and asked her to call the cops. She did, and then went inside and asked me to wait outside on the porch. I was so scared, I half expected to see the guy bolt around the corner out of the darkness and find me. All was quiet until 2 cops showed up. They brought me back to my house and called my parents. I didn't go back in until my parents got back, and even then, I thought somehow the cops just didn't find the guy, and he was still hiding somewhere in my house. More cops showed up along with an ambulance. After all these years, we still don't know what exactly happened. Our best guess is some random psycho was walking by right when the pizza guy showed up and stabbed him in the chest. I have no idea why he decided to come into my house or what he planned to do after he got in. He was never caught, and I never saw him again. The thing about all of this that I remember the clearest is the way blood looks smeared on glass. It's a lot darker than what you see in the movies. This happened to my mother before I was born over 20 years ago. She worked at a local bar. The bar mainly catered for fishermen. She knew most of the people who would come in for drinks. However, every now and again, people from town would come in. She told me that one guy used to come in who she had known from house parties around the place and always wanted to talk to her while she was working. She would say sorry and keep doing her thing. One night she finished work around midnight and was walking home, which was fairly close by. When she got home from her shift, she decided to take a shower. After her shower, making her way back to her room, she realized her bedroom door was open, which she normally kept shut. She blew it off as nothing. She laid down in bed to go to sleep. But something didn't feel right, and for reasons she can't explain, she felt the need to look under her bed. What she saw under the bed was the guy from the bar. He had followed her all the way from work. She tells me that she just stared at him for the longest time, and he didn't move, not even breathe, to the point that she thought he was dead. She calmly went out of the room and called the police. They showed up soon after, and when they went into her room, he was gone, and the window was wide open. I live alone in the mountains of Northern California. I don't get many visitors, so I was very surprised one night when I was lying in bed, and I thought I heard knocking on my front door. I opened the door, and there was no one there. I assumed then that it was just something else. It could be a number of things. The forest surrounds my property. It could be a number of different animals. I went back to bed, but not long after I laid down, I awoke to a continuous knocking sound. It sounded like it was coming from my kitchen, and not the front door like before. My house is in the middle of nowhere. The noise was so blatant, and it was getting louder as I approached my kitchen. My house is so far in the middle of nowhere. There is no way that someone could be out there. I turned on the kitchen light. What I immediately saw was horrifying. An arm reaching up from under the window outside, knocking on the window. I was frozen with fear. I turned off the light and went back to my room. Back to my room to get my gun. Once I had it loaded, I went back into the kitchen, but the arm was no longer reaching up, knocking. I sat at the kitchen table and waited. A few minutes went by, and suddenly, but slowly, a man's face slowly rose from under the window and was looking inside at me. He smiled and looked like a deranged psycho. I pointed my Glock at him, and he disappeared. I heard branches crunching outside and the sound of laughter fade, as I assume he ran away. I have lived in this house for 5.5 years, and nothing similar to this has ever happened before. I have no idea who this man was, but to say it was scary is laughable. It's an understatement. This insane-looking man had to walk incredibly far to get to my house. And for what reason? I have no idea. I don't want to know. My dad was out for a job interview, so my sister and I were home alone for about 2 hours. I watched TV downstairs and went outside, and when I went back in, I left the door unlocked for my dad, since it was getting close to the time he said that he would be home. I went upstairs and hung out with my sister for a while. I heard the front door open at one point, and then I could hear somebody moving around downstairs. I just assumed that it was my dad. I then heard my dad's bedroom door open and close, albeit very slowly, and it happened a few times. I was talking with my sister when the phone rang. To my surprise, it was my dad on the other end. He told me that he was going to be getting home late and that we needed to make our own dinner. It felt like my heart fell to my feet as he said that. I realized that it wasn't my dad that had entered the house. I hurriedly rushed downstairs to see if anyone was there. Several things were gone, and the front door was wide open. I then heard what sounded like breathing coming from the downstairs bathroom. I choked the urge to yell as I saw a hand wrap around the door and then a face look around the corner. As soon as the guy saw me, he smiled and then walked out of the bathroom and out the front door. I looked out the window but couldn't see him. On the floor in the bathroom, I found a box cutter. I'm not sure what his intentions were with this weapon, but I'm really glad he didn't use it. This happened 4 years ago. I was 16. My mom died when I was 2 years old, so it was just my dad and I. We lived in an old house that my grandparents owned, and it was falling apart. I never felt safe in this house, even when my dad was home. I always had this gut feeling that someone would eventually break in. I don't know why, and I just hoped that I wouldn't be home when they did. It was a Friday night, and my dad had to work late. I was working on a paper that was due the following Monday, and I wanted to bust it out and have the rest of the weekend to chill and do whatever I want. I was sitting at my desk in the computer room next to the kitchen. There were 2 main doors to this house, the front door and the back door in the kitchen that leads to the backyard. We had no surrounding fence at all. I was typing away, making some good progress, when the phone rang. This was in 2001, and I didn't have a cell phone at the time. My dad did, but the phone I used was the landline. I picked up the phone, and this telemarketer starts going on about selling us a new roof. He literally would not stop talking for a full 3 minutes so that I could say no thanks and just hang up. When he finally took a breath, I said, "No thank you, we rent," and hung up the phone. About 20 minutes passed, I would say, and I was halfway done with my paper. The phone rang again. I picked it up, and after I said hello, I heard nothing. Nothing except breathing. I repeated, "Hello?" And the telemarketer that had called before suddenly spoke. He apologized and said that he must have redialed my house by mistake. I thought it was slightly weird, but told him no problem and hung up again. Not 10 seconds later, the phone rang again. At this point, I had a feeling that something was wrong, and I became very aware that I was home alone. I picked up the phone and in an agitated voice said, "Yes?" I could hear the breathing again. It sounded as if he wanted me to hear him breathing. I then said, "We are not interested and we don't own this house. Please stop calling." I hung up. I got up and walked into the kitchen and got a soda from the fridge. I glanced around and felt really nervous. I watched a lot of scary movies during those times, and this night I felt like I was in one. I felt like I was being watched. I was too distracted to continue my paper, so I went into the living room and turned on the TV. After about an hour, I had gotten over the creepy calls and was starting to fall asleep. The phone rang. It jolted me awake, and I just let it ring, until I thought that it could be my dad, so I ran into the office and picked it up. Before I could say hello, the telemarketer from before said, "You have a nice house." This, as you can imagine, was the most terrifying thing I had ever heard. Before I could think of what to say back, the back door to the kitchen opened and then slammed. I hung up the phone and immediately called my dad. It rang and rang, and then he answered. But I realized something when he did. It wasn't him. It was not my dad that said hello. It was him. The guy. The telemarketer. I don't know what I was thinking after that. I remember I hung up the phone and ran into my dad's room. It had a lock. No other room had a lock. The phone rang probably 30 more times while I sat in there and waited. I heard noises all throughout the house, but I can't say for sure what they were. My dad finally got home. It was really late. He told me that his cell phone disappeared off of his desk at work and was disturbed when I explained what had happened. Someone from his work had stolen his phone and had come to our house that night. We never found out who it was. My dad still works with that same company, and it still scares me to think that whoever did this could still be working with him, interacting with him every day.